Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the work session for Monday, June 5th, 2023 of the Haverford Township Board of Commissioners. Mr. Berman, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Gondek.
Present.
Commissioner Forty-Grubb.
Here.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Here.
Commissioner Cavender.
Here.
Commissioner Quinn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Wexler.
Present.
Commissioner Trombetta.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here. Chief, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first item on tonight's work session agenda is a presentation of the final financing details for our 2023 bond issue. We welcome back Jamie Schlesinger of PFM Financial Advisors. Nice to see you, Mr. Schlesinger. A handsome tie. You have good ties.
Again, obviously, this will be the last time we We'll turn on the button. And tonight, we're going to talk about the results of that pricing. The good news is we priced the bonds a couple of weeks ago. So if you see the date on here, it says May 17th. That was the actual day that we went out and found investors to purchase your bonds. As you might recall, we worked with Janney Montgomery Scott, a Philadelphia firm who won the underwriter RFP process. They did a phenomenal job at the time of pricing. I'll name some names, which for financial people may be big deals. For other people, it may not mean anything to you. But long story short, the big boys came out and wanted to purchase your bonds, which was great news. The big, really great news was, I guess we'll say, on the 17th of May, when we locked in rates only went up since then. And that was kind of partly our plan, was to kind of get out as quickly as possible, because we were starting to hear the whispers of the debt ceiling, what's going to happen with this, what's going to happen with that. And we were a little concerned we may lose a couple investors, the flight to quality may shift a little bit. So kind of getting out when we did was very beneficial. Rates went up about 25 basis points from May 17th until today's rates. So obviously that's pretty significant as far as the amount of debt service you would pay for that increase in interest rate. So we'll flip through a few pages and highlight kind of what we see and what we received. So again, this snapshot is just where we were the day of pricing. If you see that little blue box in the bottom, it says the current rate of 2.33. Again, the 10-year MMD AAA rate, that's as of the 16th. Today's rate is 2.59. So again, about 26 basis points higher today versus when it was when we priced the bonds. So the good news is we locked in. Rates can't change since that point. What's most important here, and we've talked about a number of times, is the creditworthiness of the township. Obviously, several years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, the township's credit rating was increased to AAA. Obviously, that's a combination of many things. Obviously, strong governance, great fund balance, good demographics. You can see some of the credit strengths and challenges that are kind of highlighted in each rating report. Again, this is ultimately a public document for you, but Moody's Investor Service provides this to give the investors an idea of what they look at based on their criteria. The main things that they mentioned were obviously strong reserves as far as your credit and liquidity, and a stable economic tax base. On the governance side, having good policies is very important, and making public information known, that provides strong governance. Overall, we're in a very good position. Because we've added this amount of debt, your leverage levels, that just means the amount of debt outstanding between, which with you, the county, the school district are a little elevated. That said, based on what we're talking about and what we're considering, I don't think we're going to be going to the public market for several years unless we do any refinancings. So, this was planned for, and we're at the point where I think we're quite well for you. Just going to skip through a lot of numbers, a lot of graphs. Feel free to.
Since we're on that one page, I do have just one quick question.
Sure.
Under the factors that could lead to a downgrade, there was a comment, failure to maintain balanced operations resulting in sustained material draws on reserves to support operations. is, as far as sustained material draws, can you give us some example or of what they're talking about in that statement?
Yeah, it really is the inability to generate enough positive fund balance or operations on an ongoing basis. So conceivably, as the board does its long-term planning, your goal would be to kind of maintain a consistent, either break even or positive fund balance over the next few years. They understand that there's going to be potentially one-time, costs that may come up that you may utilize funds for, and if there's a plan for using some of those reserves. But ultimately, what drives the strong AAA credit rating is really having liquidity backed behind it. Because in the end, what this says is the ability to pay back your debt service is ultimately what they care about. So if they see a systemic draw on fund balance, when they monitor you, they may potentially downgrade you, and that can happen. And that's their job, is to kind of follow through going forward between now and when the maturity of all your debt is. If they notice things change, then there could be a change. But at this point, we've only seen, positives here in the township, but they do note these things because they want to make sure everyone understands, how the process works.
But as far as the kind of the concept of sustain, so we're talking it could be 1, 2, 3 years as opposed to like 7, 8, 9.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, again, if it's a planned draw, that's not abnormal. There could be some unique experience in the economy that you just need to do what you need to do. And again, so far it's worked out quite well. You haven't had to worry about that. But yeah, if there's a significant long term, that could be an issue.
Thank you.
You know what, as long as you brought up the issue, Ms. Cuthbertson, sorry to ask you a question that I haven't prepared you for, and I don't know the answer, but I mean, have we had any unplanned draws on our reserves in the last 5 years?
No, the past few budgets, we have budgeted to draw down, dealing with COVID, dealing with the reassessment, so that was a planned, and that was our strategy. We didn't end up having to draw down, so that worked out in our favor. Our actuals came in higher than we had anticipated during those, tumultuous times.
And that's something Moody's is aware of.
They are. They are. They look at several years back when they go through this process. Jamie, please correct me if I'm wrong.
You're correct.
But they look at our audited financial statements, see the trends that are actually happening, and that all goes into their rating process.
Exactly.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Schlesinger on this
On
particular
this
issue?
I'll keep flying through this Moody's part of it. And they like to write long reports because they charge you a lot of money for them, so. So here's the summary of where we stand. You've seen this colored page for a number of meetings, but this is kind of the final end result. And the most important thing here is we kept talking about what was going to be tax-free and what was going to be taxable. And over the course of time, I think we adequately decided how much we could do. So overall, we did about $3 million of taxable debt, and the balance was tax exempt. So the only difference between that is you pay a slightly elevated interest rate because they're just taxable. There's a higher interest rate associated with that. So we structured the debt to kind of look at all of the pieces in one combined overall payment, even though it was broken up by different purposes. So as far as the investors are concerned, they're going to get paid back approximately $1.4 million, every year between now and maturity, give or take. Your initial payment is going to be a little bit lower just because of the time of year when we finance the debt. And I should point out, when I was last here in April, the expected interest rate payment was about 1.53, and we ended up at 1.42. So approximately $100,000 lower than the expected interest rate. Now, we're usually a little conservative in our numbers, but again, I think overall, between kind of how we priced it, the investors that came in, really, really worked out well for you. So just to touch on who bought your bonds.
Before you say
Sure.
that, just one last thing I think that's worth noting. The taxable bonds are also shorter term than our longer tax exempt bonds.
That was by structure, and that's what we wanted to make sure of that, because of course, the shorter the nature, the lower the interest amount you pay. And again, the useful lives of the emergency apparatus are also shorter as well, so that allowed us to kind of keep that interest amount a little lower just because it was shorter.
Actually, I do have a question about this. So, and I apologize if I missed it, but if I recall correctly, you said that we brought in, I think it was 18.425 million?
Yes, of total principal outstanding. I'll talk about why it's a little lower than, I'm sure where you're going with this.
Yeah, my question was, when I look at the different projects that we have our ballpark numbers for, well, not really ballpark, but we have our allocated numbers for, totals 20.6. And we brought in 18.4. So I'm just, if you could elaborate on that at some point.
I'll give you some details on the structure and behind it in a second, yep.
Thank you.
So when we went out, Janney, we pre-priced the bonds. We worked together with their bond trader in Philadelphia. We have a group of people that handle the pricing side. I work on behalf of them, but we have people that literally trade every day nationally. So we went through a process to determine what was the best structure overall. So overall, we used 5% coupons on much of the debt. Okay, that means it's a premium bond issue, which is going with your question. So there'll be a little additional interest that's paid over the course of time, but we were able to reduce the principal balance by several $1 million because you were receiving funds up front because of the premium associated with it. So overall, there is a total project scope of $20.6 million, but we will have principal being paid back of about 18.5 or so. So that's the difference between the two.
Meaning that people paid $101 for a $100 bond,
Exactly right.
and that 101 went to us.
Exactly right. And the difference was we actually started looking and thinking about doing 4% coupons at one point, which would reduce that premium. And what we found is in our evaluation, the spreads between the two weren't worth taking the 4s. So we were able to actually do better on the higher coupon structure with this lower spread. So it actually benefited you to have an overall lower yield on your bonds and have optionality in the future. So I will be back in the future to refinance these debt, but overall it was better for you to do this structure versus others. That was just a combination of a math problem and seeing what the investors wanted in advance. So we kind of negotiated that as we got to the point of the pricing. So the actual buyers were big names, JP Morgan, Naveen, Boston Company, PNC, Credit Suisse, BlackRock. Those are kind of the top names that showed up at the time of pricing. In this world, those are the people you want kind of buying your bonds because they want the high credit quality, and they did come to play, which was great. So what ended up happening was, although we needed about $20 million worth of proceeds, we had $40 million worth of people that wanted to buy your bonds, which essentially means that at the time of pricing, we were actually able to reduce the yields at the time of the sale. So we went out for a certain yield. A lot of people came in and said we wanted to buy it more than what we were willing to offer. And then in that case, we were able to reduce the yields and maintain the investors that came in. And that's a good thing. You want that to happen. So we had enough people that were interested, and the fact there was enough demand allowed us to reduce the yield overall. So again, win-win overall for the township, just in the combination of the market and the credit quality. I'll only just point on these. This is the proposed tax-exempt amortization. So what's important here is I should mention, as part of the evaluation, we also determined, because of this credit spreads and the value, we did do a 10-year call provision on this, which was adequate and what is traditional for non-bank qualified transaction. We did consider shortening up a little bit. However, the premium we would have paid in interest rate wasn't worth the extra year or so in reduced call provision. So conceivably, in the future, if we wanted to refinance, the economic value of having a little longer call provision gave us the lower overall yields, and we didn't pay for it. So that was kind of what we worked through on that part of that process as well, and that's the taxable. Taxable is non-callable. Unfortunately, just in this market, the taxable market doesn't have anything shorter than 10 years. So since we amortize it over a 10-year period, we couldn't make it callable. Outside of that, this is really just the math, kind of how we came up with the end result. As I brought up earlier, you had about $18,425,000 worth of total principal that you will pay back with the Series A and the Series B, the tax exempt and taxable. And because of that additional premium that is generated from that 5% coupons, we reduced the amount necessary to have a total proceeds available about 20.4 or so. Net of all that is the costs, and again, there's the yields that are assumed with this transaction. So the tax exempt yield is 3.1%, and the taxable rate is about 4.5%. That's about it. Besides this page, this is just the snapshot of what the debt profile of the township will be. between now and maturity, assuming we never do another financing or refinancing in the future. So in total, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you have about $62 million now of total outstanding principal, with a total interest of about 44 million, give or take, in total interest. You will have the ability to prepay, your debt over the course of time. So probably the next time you'll see me will probably be in 2025, when we start to consider refinancing the 2020s, assuming, interest rates behave. And going forward, you'll have other options.
Mr. Schlesinger, one last observation. I'm looking at my sources and uses, and we've got bond proceeds of $20,652,000. We've got the deposit to the construction fund of $20,403,000. Back when I did this work, I remember that you usually ballparked 2% for cost of issuance, but it looks to me like we did this for about 1.25%.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, there was a couple reasons why 2% is a good ballpark one. Now, when we went through the process for the RFP, one of the things we did was we wanted to lock in the underwriter at the lowest cost. They're traditionally one of the higher cost overall, because we wanted to maintain that for that 501c3 status on some of that debt. That's an important factor when we were kind of meeting the standards of the tax exempt piece of it. So the underwriter's discount was about $3 or so a bond, which is, a good fee in comparison to what we normally see. So overall, we were, happy with the overall cost. This was a little harder transaction, so some of the soft costs are a little higher, but generally speaking.
Yeah, but that
this was-
OID, that underwriter's discount, that's
is
significantly
relatively low.
low.
Yeah. Now, again, big picture, it's about true interest cost. You take a combination of the overall interest rate and the cost associated with it. Again, all in market. And again, for what we had to do and how we did it, I think it went quite well.
Anybody have any questions?
In terms of that, so, again, kind of going back to what we had budgeted for each of the items, the library, the fire apparatus, and so on, it came out to 20.6, where we put 20.4 in the bank. Is that, and I don't know if this is a question for you or Ms. Cuthbertson, but is that in line with what we are anticipating to be, the final deposit in the bank for our use?
You can never, and again, Jamie, please correct me if I'm wrong, you can never go exactly as to what is going to go into the construction account. So this is pretty close. We have a few revenue line items that are coming in over budget, and that's where I anticipate bringing to the board of how we will make up, if we need to make up any dollar amount in between what we plan to spend and what is going into the construction fund. For instance, our investment income is up over budget, so we have a couple options.
I should point out what's not shown here, to your point, is the interest earnings that you're going to generate from the proceeds of the debt. That's very important in this market. 2 years ago, if we were to borrow this money, the interest earnings would have been 2 basis points. Now you're able to earn well over that. Now, frankly, because of the arbitrage yield, you can't earn anything above 3.1% on your tax exempt piece. So anything that's actually earned that's above that will be rebated back to the IRS. So conceivably right now, the Pliget investment, which is where most of your monies are going to sit, that is earning over 5% right now. So we're going to manage that arbitrage rebate over the next few years with the understanding that you can keep up to 3%. So, every year as this, this process goes on, you'll have some interest earnings that are going to go toward the payment of the project itself. And anything over above that, you can figure out what we'll do with that later.
But at 5%, we'll make this money back on this construction fund in 4 months.
Yeah, it's going to come back
That
fast.
will make money back that would have covered all the cost of issuance.
Oh, yes. Yeah, by far. Yeah, there's again, depends how fast you spend the money and with all the projects, but there'll be significant interest earnings from the construction fund deposit.
And I apologize, you said we can only actually keep 3% of it?
You're only allowed to keep 3.1, which is a requirement under the arbitrage rebate.
And where's the rest go?
IRS
Back to
gets
the
it.
IRS?
Yeah.
It's great, isn't it?
So, well, what the IRS doesn't want you to do as a local government is become investors. Their understanding is they're giving you the opportunity to sell your bonds at tax-free interest rates, and you can invest them in taxable interest rates, an interest rate environment. So that difference is why they made those rules in 1986. So we have to follow them.
Yeah, Commissioner Gondik isn't old enough, but some of us on the board are, to remember student loans at 5%, and we could put them in checking accounts at 13% in the late 70s and early 80s. So, yeah,
Yeah, again.
the IRS dropped the hammer on that.
Yeah, it's a very unique circumstance right now that short-term interest rates are much higher than the long-term interest rates. So again, right now, you are going to benefit from that environment. And over the course of time, we'll monitor that over the next, couple of years and see where it shakes out.
Thank you.
Sure. But congratulations, again, we were real happy with the results. I thought the team did a great job. Obviously, you maintained the AAA status. We'll, obviously keep doing what you're doing. If there'll be surveillance calls over the course of time, and as you kind of work through your budgets, we'll be available to answer any questions, but probably be a couple years until you see me again. Any other questions?
Mr. Schlesinger, every time you stand up there, you validate our original decision to work with you and work with PFM. Thank you for all the work that you and the rest of your professional staff and all the other folks who assisted in making this transaction happen. Thank you very much for these efforts. We appreciate it. The people of Haverford Township appreciate it. And when you take a book out of that new library, just think about the role you played in that.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
The Environmental Advisory Committee will now be presenting to us information about a composting grant. Welcome.
How to get to them. Can I get assistance in how to switch this?
What do you need to get on? I'll find it.
On the desktop. Right.
No.
I think it's in the PDFs. Go to that one. Is that the only one there? Look on the home screen of that computer and see if it's just there.
Yeah, there it is.
Start slideshow.
Is it? Okay. Great. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Joy Baxter. I'm the chairperson of the Environmental Advisory Committee. That being said, I'm really here as a volunteer. So there's two volunteer grant writers, myself and Aurora Dizelle, who's with the assistance of the township and the commissioners. We submitted a grant for USDA to the USDA to increase composting, and we got it. So this is a 2-year grant from May of this year to May 2025. There are many components to the grant, very specific components to grant, how we're going to use this money to increase composting in the township. Tonight, I'm specifically talking to you about the residential incentives for curbside composting. So this would be for hiring an already existing composting company to pick up the food waste curbside. You might not know that we already compost. So our yard waste is composted. It is composted into mulch. So we're already doing that, which is great. The USDA wants to increase composting because food waste made into compost is a really valuable resource. It's a natural fertilizer and it creates more food. For municipalities, having a composting food waste stream would divert almost 20% of our municipal waste. So that's why it's also important to us, and that's why it was part of the climate action to reduce municipal waste, and one of the ways to do that was by composting. I want to thank all the people that have been instrumental in this, specifically Eileen Matola, who's been my coordinator with the township to make this happen, as well as Judy Trombetta, Amy Cuthbertson, Dan Mariani, Dave Berman, and all of the commissioners. The total federal contribution of the grant is $88,848. The township contribution is $22,606. All of those are existing salaries with no additional outlay from the township. And some of that will be offset by volunteer hours. I wanted to point out that we are in a select group of awardees for this grant, especially in Pennsylvania. The other awardees are the City of Philadelphia and the City of Pittsburgh. So I've already received and talked with different people from environmental groups in different municipalities. I would expect you also to receive calls from your colleagues in different municipalities and how you can get this grant and utilize it for their municipalities. So for the incentive for increasing the composting, this is for new customers. So that's one of the things that you might receive from your constituents is why, as an existing customer, am I not getting this incentive? It's because this grant is for increasing composting, and those people are already doing it. So, and we have many people who are already utilizing the two companies that are service Haverford Township, Easy Composting and Mother Compost. The way, if you're not familiar with these services, what happens is you get a bucket, and it's about a 5-gallon bucket, and then you put that out curbside, and it's collected every other week. The weight of the diverted waste is determined, the bucket is wiped down, and a new compostable liner is put in the bucket. This is about a $40 for this grant. The incentives for 2 months free composting service represents about a $40 value to the households. All the contracting will be done between the household and the existing composting services. So the resident contacts directly either Easy Composting or Mother Compost. We are open to other companies. Those are the only companies right now servicing Haverford Township. I've reached out to all the ones that are servicing the suburbs and invited them to participate, but these are the two companies that are servicing. If there are other companies that wish to be part of the program, they can contact the township as well. The township provides the way, like, practically this works is the township then provides reimbursement to the composting companies quarterly. So that's how the funds are distributed. As far as the budgeting, right now we have 600 incentives available. As you know, we have around 17,000 households in the township. We don't know how fast this is going to go, but we hope it, is steady for the companies, steady increase, so that it could be very manageable. So advertising for this. So the upcoming advertising will be in the next township newsletter, Have a Good Times, and social media. And we would love to have your help in promoting this. So I'll be sending you guys this little clip, this little graphic, that hopefully in your next communication to your constituents, that you can encourage them to do this. Any questions?
Joy, thanks for getting the grant, or your work on it. How much, so I'm gathering after the first 2 months, it's about $20 a month, or?
It's about $20 a month. Depending on the company, there's a little discount if you sign up annually.
Okay, and there's no, if somebody signs up and is in it for 2 months and then decides they don't want to do it, there's no longer-term commitment?
No. To kind of get started, I think both of the companies have a cost to get the bucket. So that there will be a little bit of money exchanged from the household, I think, for the purchase of the bucket.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I can tell you that my family's been using Mother Compost, and that's That has been very good, and for 2 seasons now, we've gotten the big 50-pound bags of compost that come back at the end of the start of the season, and it's great. Thank you for this work.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The Human Relations Commission will now be presenting to us.
Hi.
Welcome.
Also a customer of Mother Compost, so thank you very much. Thank you. All right, how do we get to our thing here?
So do you know if you miss pickup, if you put stuff out, you can dump, they do have a place where you can dump the compost.
I'm sorry?
If you miss the pickup on, mine's Tuesday mornings, they do have a place where you can take your bucket and
Yes,
dump it.
I know, I usually just eat the $5 fee though. But that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. We are from the Haverford Commission. We are from the HRC. And my name's Julie Kinkoff. I live in the 7th Ward, and I am the chairperson. And
I'm Rosalind Spiegel, and I'm vice chair. I live in the 5th Ward.
we are very happy to say we now have a full commission. Thank you very much for the recent appointments. These are the names of the other commissioners. As you can see, we're all from different wards. There are 3, let's see, just a little bit about us. There are 3 attorneys on the commission. Myself, Janet, and Andrew. And there are DEI experts on the commission, HR experts, lots of parents of all age children. And we have a full, I mean, I'm just really excited that we have a full complement now. Talk about. Here's some of the things. First of all, thank you for the pride flag. It's so wonderful to see the pride flag, above the commission above the township building. You want to talk about some of these?
Yeah, we just also really wanted to thank you for your support in these House bills, which were to address the shortcomings in the laws to combat hate crimes. We are representative, our committee itself is quite diverse, so we're representative of a lot of different kinds of identities, and we really appreciate this. And we also appreciate the statements that you've made in the past and the 2 upcoming proclamations for Juneteenth and Pride Month. So we really will, sort of add our support to that in our PR work too.
Yeah, so you may not, I mean, obviously, but a lot of people in the commission don't know that we have an ordinance. And you want to talk about the ordinance a little bit?
Yes, sure. Oh, you know what? We've got swag.
Oh, yeah, we have swag. We have swag. So the ordinance that was passed by the township covers all of these. I'm not going to read this. This is too long. But it also basically supplements the Commonwealth law and obviously the federal law. And it goes further than than the Commonwealth law in terms of its support in terms of what we call the protected classes, the people who are protected by the ordinance. And basically, we are here to foster employment of all individuals in accordance with their fullest capacities. And you see all of that there. Basically, we want to guarantee fair and equal treatment under the law for the people of Haverford Township. And we want to do what we can to help promote diversity in Haverford Township. So how do we do that? Here's our plan for how we're going to do that. We are going to work on educating residents with some of the swag that we're talking about there. We were at last year's, not the one that just happened, but last year's Historical Commission, the thing on Curricung Drive, the Heritage Festival. And we were really, really ready to do Haverford Township Day, as I'm sure you all were as well. But for the storm. So that's one thing that we do. And we also are going to work with, other township officials like Dave, businesses, the Discover Haverford group, those sort of things, hopefully to help basically promote the township's anti-discrimination ordinance. And also you want to talk a little bit about the dialogue and the community some of those programs that we had in mind?
Yes, yeah, their commissioners are looking to see what other community organizations we could do some outreach to. So we've been in touch with some other community organizations. I don't know whether we should name names until they're actually confirmed, but we're seeing. But, and of course, being here tonight is part of that outreach as well. So we appreciate this. Did you want to talk about the ward newsletter?
Oh, yeah, we can do that too. Just to, the last part there, mediation, if somebody does actually file a complaint with the commission, our first goal is to help mediate that complaint. And I know that, I know several of the several of the people on the HRC have experience with mediation. I know I do, and some of the other people do. So that's another part of what we are going to offer the community. Some of the things that we've done as a group, as our little group, this was something I got to be honest, I didn't really know about, but one of our commissioners mentioned that accessible font on emails, that sometimes it's hard for people who have different ways of learning and different ways of seeing things to see font. I always used Times New Roman on everything I wrote, and to find out that that's probably the worst one you could use. So, so as a commission, we kind of made a decision that we were only going to use an accessible font with us on our communications. And we may be talking to you about that sometime in the future for a township-wide program. We also participate in the tri-state meetings. I know you participate in those.
Yes, and those have been really helpful, just sort of to be together with other human relations commissions across New Jersey, primarily New Jersey and Pennsylvania, a little bit in Delaware, just to find out what other HRCs are doing and sort of trade swap back and forth ideas about what we could be doing here as well. That was one of them. And the other one were some other ideas we had about, you know, maybe a pledge to sign, putting something up on the pledge that individuals and businesses can sign, you know, getting the word out around Facebook. What am I missing?
Yeah, so we are on Facebook. And so we do post, we try to post every month. We just put the post up for Pride Month. If you are also on Facebook, we would ask that you like and share and follow our Facebook page to help spread the word on that. The idea with the Facebook things is to talk about, like for example, the Pride one talked about how Pride started, and it talked about the resolutions that you recently passed for the laws, and thanked you for those. And then so we'll talk a little bit about the history of whatever the month is, if it's Black History Month or Pride Month or whatever the occasion is. And so, if you could help us spread the word on those, we can also send it to you via email so that if you want to put it in your newsletter, you could do, it's a short little Facebook blurb, so it's not that long. Here's our goals. We want to increase awareness. We want to do what we can to make Haverford an inclusive, equitable community. And so, of course, here's some things that we want some help with, or some things that we would like to see happen. You have the HRC, the trifold. We'd like to get some more visibility with that. Maybe have it in the township building. I also mentioned that we're talking about the different fonts. We're going to talk more about that later, maybe in the summer. We first of all want to talk with Dave and find out what's already, how things are already working, and seeing, where things stand with that. We have found that it's a little hard to find us on the internet, on the township's page. So we're working with Amy, and one of our other commissioners who's not here is the person who's taking that on. So I'm not, but we know the right people to talk to, and we are having those conversations to see if we can improve that visibility somewhat. And then let's see what else we got. How you can help. Right, because there's always an ask, isn't there? There's always an ask. If you could, include a short description of the HRC in your newsletter. Mm-hmm. Like I said, like and share Facebook. And if you think that it would be beneficial for your constituents to hear from us, we would be happy to come to your ward meetings. We are in most of the wards, so.
But we travel.
We travel, yes, exactly.
In our hybrid cars.
That's it. Any questions?
I was going to ask you about accessible fonts, but you indicated two of them.
The sans serif.
And Sarah.
So we just, as you go sort of look through the notes and agendas from your meetings, the proclamations, which thank you for the upcoming proclamations, and those are in not sans serif. Those look like they're in some kind of Times New Roman font, for example. So,
Yeah, which I always thought looked pretty, but it's, I mean, it's not, that's the thing. It's not one of those things that you ever think about because it's not something that has affected you. So we are very grateful for our commissioner who brought that to our attention so that we could fix it. So, and we do plan on coming to more of your meetings. And we are happy to support the proclamations or the resolutions that you offer. That like the Pride one and the Juneteenth proclamation, which I know are on the agenda. And, we want to help you as much as we can.
right. So, and will those be addressed? I'm sorry, a little admin ask here. Are those going to be addressed at the next meeting on the 12th? Is that when those come up?
The Juneteenth and the Pride one?
Juneteenth and
Yes.
the Pride, okay,
Right,
thank you.
that's at our official meeting. Tonight is an informational meeting. Next Monday is when we act.
Got it.
And those require action.
Great.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Before we stop, I just wanted to thank you both for everything that you're doing and all the members of the commission. I'm your liaison. I know we've interacted in a variety of ways, but I'm really heartened by the way you've kind of dug into these issues. When I was on the HRC, it became very clear that these commissions really live with the people who are on them and what their interest is, what their expertise is, how much time they have. We're all giving our time here. And so I just really appreciate you not only kind of helping educate people about the big picture, but also taking the time to look at like font accessibility and things like that. When I first started, I have a resident who started to educate me about that and about, headline sizes and consistency and alt text with images. And again, like we don't know about that until we learn and are educated. And so I just really want to thank you for playing a role in that way and for coming to present to us tonight.
Thanks, you're actually reminding me, I know there's some funding put aside for the library upgrade at some point. Maybe just have somebody in a wheelchair go through the building to check its accessibility, things that we wouldn't normally think of. Yeah, so please feel free to be in touch with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for your service to our township. Next on our agenda would be any commissioner committee updates. Let me open the floor for any commissioner to report on any one of our standing township committees.
Mr. President, I'd just like to note that the Finance Committee did meet on May 22nd to discuss many of the issues Mr. Schlesinger presented on tonight and just to plan out into the future, but just that meeting did occur.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner McCluskey. In addition to our standing committees, we have not necessarily an ad hoc committee, but we deal with issues that certain commissioners take on. And I've asked Commissioner Cavender to report on the progress with regard to the negotiations and happenings at the polo field.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity to provide an update. This isn't an official committee, but it's a township-wide issue that we're working through. It's a little bit complex. What we're proposing is a somewhat innovative approach to how we're going to administer this park. So on the 16th of May, I had the opportunity to speak with a number of residents at the polling places on Election Day. And I heard a few questions about Polo Field that thought it might be helpful to just address directly. So the first question I've gotten a lot of is many people have asked why Haverford would give away our own fields to Lower Merion. So I just want to state really clearly again, and I will say it again and again and again, Haverford Township does not currently own Polo Field. We have no legally binding control right now over how it's used. Lower Merion and Haverford Township have shared this use. We have a loose agreement. It's equal use. It's always been that way for 80 years. So this proposal clarifies and formalizes the transfer of these 18 acres to Haverford. We would then own, conserve, and preserve Polo Field in perpetuity as a park, which is as the original donor intended. So as part of this proposal, Lower Merion kids would use the same fields with the same intensity of use that Lower Merion kids have already been using for decades. Additionally, Lower Merion will make more than $250,000 investment into community spaces at Polo Field. This is the largest investment into Polo Field in its history. I want to state that traffic on Railroad Avenue is still a concern. That's another issue that people brought up that I've heard numerous times, was reminded again on Election Day from folks, really what they're hearing and what their main concerns are. Traffic on Railroad Avenue is still a concern. We haven't identified the right solution for bus traffic, in my opinion. Drop off on Railroad Avenue during rush hour is complicated. I don't expect us to sign an agreement before we're able to ensure that any solution we come up with is safe and is able to mitigate some of those extensive traffic backups that could be predicted in the neighborhood. Those are the main updates, and I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity to share with the board.
Thank you, Commissioner Cavender. I do have another, thank you, Commissioner Cavender. I do have another report from Vice President Trombetta.
Thank you. On May 24th, the Commissioners' Economic Development Committee met with Assistant Township Manager Amy Cuthbertson to begin discussion about the creation of a Women and Minority Business Enterprises Economic Development Competitive Grant Program. The concept is that the township will provide grants to promote the economic growth and development of Haverford Township businesses, meeting the classification of a woman or minority business enterprise. As a reminder to my colleagues on the board and to the public, American Rescue Plan Act funds were proposed for this program in the adopted budget for this year. The committee is still in the process of finalizing the program language now, and we'll be sharing it with our colleagues in the near future with hopes of passing a resolution to formally approve the use of ARPA funds for this program. Also, as chair of the Commissioners' Economic Development Committee, I serve as the liaison to the Discover Haverford Board of Directors. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Discover Haverford is hosting their Haver Food Festival this Friday, June 9th from 4 to 9 p.m. at the Township Building parking lot. Admission is $5 per person or $20 per family, and all money raised goes towards the work of Discover Haverford. So I hope you all will come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trombetta. Does any other commissioner wish to provide any updates? Hearing none, I will invite the chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. So May of 23 for the monthly chief report, we had a very, very active month. 21 criminal arrests, 2 juvenile arrests, 208 traffic citations, 16 non-traffic citations, 224 written warnings were issued, 541 parking tickets. We had 1 burglary at 2343 Haverford Road, Eagle Pizza. And then we get into the motor vehicle attempts and thefts. So we had 54 thefts or attempted thefts from automobiles in the past month. I updated that. I did I sent you an email before the weekend to give you a heads up in case you got any calls, but obviously we've had more since then. So of those, 12 were catalytic converter thefts, and the other ones were cars being entered all unlocked, with the exception of 2 were at the Marion East Golf Course. We made an arrest of 2 juveniles and 700 block of Cricket Avenue when they entered a vehicle and removed a purse. So we have taken extensive measures to help with this problem. And as I stated before, this is not a problem in Haverford Township exclusively. It is a regional problem. It starts as far as Wilmington, Delaware, works its way all the way up to the Harrisburg area. So it's a continuing issue, but we are in contact. We're involved in a task force with the Wilmington Police, New Jersey State Police, New Jersey Police Departments. They are experiencing the same thing. So at one point, there was a car stolen off of Hollis Road. One of our unmarked undercover vehicles was there, got behind the car, called for assistance with a marked car. As a marked car pulled up in front of the vehicle, the car took off at a higher rate of speed, mowed down a fence, took off, and ended up down at a high rate of speed. The officer called a pursuit off because of safety issues. We had another one taken in Chatham Park. Same thing. Officers were there, and the vehicle disappeared that quickly. I don't know if you're aware, but we do have a pursuit policy. Stolen cars are one thing, but the end result of pursuit could be very deadly. So supervisor has the orders to call off a pursuit if he finds it to be unsafe. So this is why I think a lot of these problems occur. They know these people who are stealing vehicles know that police are backing off from this, and the problems that happen in our surrounding areas with the crime rate and the lack of prosecution in some areas. So that's where we're at with that. That's the biggest thing that I have to offer for the crime report was that, and then we had canine usage. Upper Darby Police, the canine Django did locate a theft suspect hiding under a van, and the actor was taken into custody without incident. This was part of the thefts in Upper Darby also. So we assisted them, and the 2 suspects were arrested, but it continues. But I can assure you we are taking measures, and we'll do our best, because I'm not happy standing here in front of you saying that we had all these thefts and crime is rising, but just not happy with it. But we'll do everything we can to make arrests as we move forward. So, if I may get a card, I have a good announcement to make. So I gave each commissioner a card. I have more you can take to give to your constituents. So we have the Haverford Alerts, which you voted on, I think, 2 months ago to purchase this. So this is a new way to receive emergency alerts. You could sign up for it through the app, which is on the bottom right back of the card. So you can take advantage of this tool, submit tips, receive weather alerts, stay informed with proper and important status updates. So if there's, as I spoke to you about purchasing it a few months ago, if there's a crime or something is happening in your neighborhood, whether it be a weather alert, just as we had that water main break at Eagle Road and Lawrence Road over the weekend, we can alert the residents of a water problem or a traffic problem. So the more people that sign up, and if you sign up your camera, as I stated before, we have no access to the camera. It just gives us a secure database that we can go and knock on residents' door and ask that they could share that video with us. Believe me, it's very important. It does a world of good. Every person that we find with a camera system, they always share it with us, and we get a lot of good video, which we usually put out, and we do make arrests from it. So I would ask if you would share this in your newsletters and give it out to your constituents as you go to your meetings, and we'll have a full rollout on social media in the next day or so and get this moving. So,
Chief, remind me, with regard to signing up for this, the benefit to the PD is that they don't have to go up and down a street to find out who does or doesn't have cameras. Right. You will have a database that says
secure database.
Something happens
it goes to no one else but the police department.
So something happens on 2400 County Line Road, you'll know what houses on 2400 County Line Road have
That's correct.
cameras, and then you'll individually ask those homes whether or not they'll share the info.
This is our detectives do when we have a crime the night before, and the patrol officers that go up and down the street knocking on doors to see if people have cameras. And believe me, more people than you expect do have some sort of camera system on their houses and what they see from the street. So it does us a lot of good for investigations.
Chief, has this been put up on our social media, all of our social media pages?
Yes.
Great. Yes, Commissioner Forster-Grupp, I apologize.
That's all right. Is this also on our website? Because I was checking and I didn't see
No,
anything.
we're rolling it out tonight.
Rolling it out
Yes,
tonight.
We're rolling it out tonight. So I was
how
waiting for these.
exciting.
Okay.
Oh, great. Thank you. That's good news.
Oh, good. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Next on our agenda, we consider the ordinances the resolutions and the contract awards, and a proclamation that will be considered for next week, considered next week. We'll start with ordinances. We have 3 of them. The first 2 ordinances, P7 and P8, are traffic ordinances. One is a first reading, the other is a second reading. Did anybody have any questions or comments or concerns about these traffic ordinances? Our third ordinance is to amend a ground lease at 2080 Old Westchester Pike. This is the Celco part. This is a partnership, Celco partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless. This is our first reading. Ms. Cuthbertson, would you describe this for us?
Sure. So as you know, we are a party to lease for several pieces of ground, and or we were a former party to a lease of a cell tower. We've disposed of that. But this is over at the Public Works Yard, so the access road over to the Public Works Yard. The tower there is not owned by the township. That is owned by a third party, but there are tenants ground leasing. They're leasing the ground for storage, things like that. One of them is Verizon, one of them is AT&T, and the tower owner is American Tower. We renegotiated with AT&T at their request, probably within the past 18 months, and there's a lot of whisper down the lane with the cell tower company, so I think Verizon caught wind of it and then approached us also to renegotiate. The new terms are more in line with what we are paying AT&T, so it is market. In exchange, they extended the term of the lease, so it'll be a 40-year lease right now. With the caveat, they can bail out of it if they want to, but.
I'm sorry to correct you, but I thought you said paying AT&T. Is it the other way around? They're paying us for the lease, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry if I misspoke. Both are paying us. The terms of the Verizon, the proposed terms will put their lease payments more in line with what AT&T is paying for a similar piece of ground.
And by our charter, any lease agreement like this, we need to approve by ordinance.
Correct. So there'll be 2 readings with the final in July.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for
How much
our
is
Township Finance Director?
the rent?
It's going to be about $200 a month less, not starting until the end of 27.
Thank you. Is there any opportunity for that to change just based on inflation, or this is?
It'll go up 2% per year throughout the term of the lease.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for our Township Finance Director? Hearing none. The next thing for our consideration next week is resolution number 2312 of 2023. This relates to ARPA funds and the Heart Rescue Program. And anyone have any questions or comments about it?
Just with the purchase of the defibrillators, will all the police vehicles have a defibrillator?
Yeah, yes, they will. They have them now. We're just upgrading them,
We're just
as
upgrading,
Jim
And
said
that's the
last
same
month.
thing with the fire rescue, we're upgrading.
Yes, they'll all be upgraded to be compatible with the current EMS systems.
Thank you.
Director McCanns, why don't you just give us 30 seconds on this program?
Fair. All right, thank you, sir. What we're trying to do is match the defibrillator pads that are placed on somebody during a cardiac arrest. So very frequently, almost every time, the police are first on location because they're in zones, and there's more of them. And they start CPR right away, put the person on the defibrillator right away. Well, what the current resuscitative science has shown us is that any interruption in compressions during CPR leads directly to a reduction in the success rate. So the faster we can start CPR and stay with it, deliver the shocks as needed on certain intervals, and introduce the proper resuscitative medicines, all in the set sequence that is given to us by resuscitative medicine physicians. What we found is just by looking over the whole program, the one thing we're missing is that our defibrillators in the police department are not compatible with the newest newest defibrillators or the newest monitoring systems that Narberth Ambulance has. So this was an opportunity to upgrade those monitors, which are currently a company called Zoll, to a company called Stryker, which is compatible with the LifePak 15 monitor. So what we were doing is putting on a set of pads, about $100 pair of pads, working on the person. As EMS came in, tearing off those pads, putting on the next set of pads. Again, another set of pads, another $100 set of pads. These are multi-function pads. And that took a little bit of research to figure out if these were not just compatible, we could plug them in, but they would do all the functions as then read the EKG, but also defibrillate, provide a synchronized cardioversion, which is another kind of defibrillation, or at a certain time, we could actually pace somebody externally. Traditionally, the pads that you would get for a civilian defibrillator wouldn't be able to do all those functions. The ones with Stryker now are completely compatible. I think that's actually on their end, it was a better move just to make all of them work together just the way they're supposed to. But it is kind of like a whole downstream thing that, hey, if you get them on early, why peel them off? We don't have to stop compressions. We get good feedback from the CPR that's being performed through the pads. All of this in conjunction has indeed, it really appears as though it will reduce costs, but stop that short period of time where we had to interrupt compressions. So with that, the end result was also now that all those defibrillators are available, and we still own them. So we're looking to now, the next step is to research where we can put them in the community where people will be the most remote and we have the most people. So it's kind of probably every park, every field that we can get them at and have them available just in cabinets, what have you, that they can be accessible. The last part of this is actually the first part. And that is starting with training for CPR. We're very successful with getting 150 people trained, sponsored through the township recently for baseball season. And now we're aiming towards the upcoming football season. Just the focus is where we're opening to as many people as we can in the community. The real focus is on all of the sports groups. So we can have just focus on that many people and make it that much safer and increase the survivability that much more. But people think, why are we just looking at, okay, there's a lot of kids playing. How about, other places in the community? Well, think about it when there's a kids' ball team playing. There's a lot of spectators, a lot of grandparents, a lot of parents, everybody there. So it is a concentration of people, but it's also a young life that, as we saw with DeMar Hamlin, we can maybe turn things around. So that's the program.
Well, that was a very informative 30 seconds. Thank you, Dr. McCann.
I was going by your watch.
Yeah. Actually, you're a little brief by my watch, but that's okay. No, thank you. And the idea of these being state of the art and able to follow the patient through all the various folks who will touch that patient is great. That's terrific.
Can I see that in the whereas it's that the need is for, within our community, for first responder CPR training within organized sports leagues and volunteer fire companies. Would there be possibilities for people who are not associated with those two groups to go to that CPR training, or would that need to be a different program?
It'll probably need to be a different program because we do have quite a demand for these, for the other people who are named, but that was where we kind of identified as probably the most training we can get in the most places among the most people as fast as possible. As far as the lay community, anybody else has special need training, like, whatever. For a while there, we've had people come home with perhaps premature infants. They're trained in the hospital and they get home and it's so overwhelming, or a special needs child, they'll reach out and say, oh my gosh, I know I was trained, but I'm so overwhelmed. And we would go over to the house and train them. That's still all available. But if individuals are interested, we can at least guide them to training right now. But hopefully in the future, we can start it up. We'll do something at least monthly or every other month or something. We can have community training.
I think that would be a fabulous program to offer across the township, because there are lots of people who don't participate in sports programs specifically who I hope never would need that information, but might. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for Director McCants? Hearing none. The next resolution that we will be considering next week is the liquid fuels tax funds. This is Resolution 2313 of 2023. Mr. Berman, can you describe this to us?
Yes, this allows the township to use the liquid fuels revenue for the streetlight operating costs.
Excellent. Anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Berman?
Just very briefly, in terms of the amount of money that's coming in currently, is that in line with what we were anticipating, or is that higher or lower?
You might recall, we get quite a bit of money from the state. We get about 1.4 million from the state. So this is just from the county. The county also allocates monies to its member municipalities. In the past, we've gotten about 66,000, so it is down a little bit, but I think that's down statewide because that's based on the liquid fuel, the insurance monies paid by foreign insurance companies in the state, and that has gone down since COVID.
Thank you.
And when you refer to being down from 66,000, there's a current year allocation of 53.5, but we're also deferred allocation from last year.
Yes,
So
you can
this
roll it
number.
over for 1 year, so we still haven't used our 22 monies. Historically, we've been using it for road programs, but we did not do a road program last year or this year due to the amount of utility work going on in the township. So we have to use it by the end of this year, which is why we are advising the county that we're going to use it for streetlight, our operations for streetlight monies.
Right. And that's, we anticipate using it all,
Yes,
107,000.
we will.
Okay. The next resolution for us to consider next week is Resolution 2314. This is the approval of the 2023 Community Development Block Grant HUD Action Plan application. Ms. Cuthbertson, do you want to describe this to us?
This is an annual step that we do each year when we adopt the action plan. CDBG program is the federal plan that the township has been participating in for many, many years. We get to the tune of about $700,000 from it, most of which goes to rehabilitation for low to moderate income property owners. We are also able to use some of it for public projects, for historic maintenance, domestic violence, to prevent homelessness, things like that. So we go through this action every year around this time, adopting the action plan of how we plan on spending those monies. And I believe Ms. Houlihan is going to be here. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong. Is she coming next week to advise?
That is correct. Kathy Houlihan from Dunleavy, they're our third-party administrator of the program, will be here next week to speak with the board. And the action plan is included in the packet that is published online.
The public notice that is attached to this includes a breakdown of the funds being spent generally, as you described. The majority of them for housing rehabilitation, and then a number of other categories. The second and third biggest being accessibility improvements and transportation services for senior citizens program administration. Is this spread and variety and assortment of services what we have typically done with the CDBG funds?
Yes, it is. There's only certain things we can use it on, so this is pretty representative of what we've historically done.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Just, is the amount that we give to Surrey, is that the same year to year, or?
It is the same year to year.
Okay.
And that is one of the areas that I believe there's a cap on what we can give for seniors.
The same thing with the transportation,
Transportation is also at the same level that we have been for the past few years.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions about this, Mr. President.
Oh, yes, of course. Commissioner Forresty-Grubb.
How are the funds for the housing rehabilitation dispersed, and what are they used for?
The housing rehabilitation funds are used for residents who have low to moderate income, and they're able to apply to use these funds for home improvements, repairs. Often it's a roof or a bathroom renovation, things of that nature. And they are managed by Dunleavy. The projects are managed by Dunleavy. There's input through other consultants, and there is a contractor that gets paid directly by the program. And so the residents have the benefit of having that management involved in the program, and it essentially goes against the property. And it's kind of like a lien against the property, Amy?
That is correct, and so much of it is forgiven each year that they retain ownership as their primary ownership. Ms. Houlihan usually does give a small summary just for the benefit of all the board members, a recap of the program. Residents apply for it. There is a waiting list right now, if I believe so. So it's a very popular program, and we try and use every dollar we can.
That staggered forgiveness of the debt associated with the money is to prevent, just financing people who are flipping homes that need work. And what often happens, I've seen it happen in the Sixth Ward, is that a property is brought to someone's attention, and people often aren't aware of the availability of these funds. And it can be life-saving for folks, to have a roof repaired, and they have no intention of turning around and selling the house in 6 months. Is it 5 years, 10 years 5 years that it takes to forgive it?
I want to say it's more than 5 years, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful program offered to our residents. What other projects have been done in the last couple of years using these funds? Just to give sort of a recap.
We've done quite a few playground upgrades in the low to moderate income neighborhoods. We have, upgraded playground equipment. We did the Lanark Park ramp, the handicap ramp at Lanark Park was done, that's right. And some historic projects at Niter Hall, the Federal School, and the Grange Estate.
Dave, one of the things we've done at Elwell is replace some playground equipment. And that's been really useful for the use of that grant.
Yes, that's correct. Brian Barrett from Park and Rec you worked with the group over there to have that equipment replaced, and that was through this program.
Yeah, it's really great.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments on the Community Development Block Grant HUD Action Plan application? We will hear from Ms. Houlihan next week and consider it then. Finally, the last resolution we will consider next week will be a resolution 2315 of 2023. In this resolution, the board will consider renaming Field C here at Veterans Field in honor of our colleague and former 7th Ward Commissioner Jim McGarity, in recognition of his
just to give some background, and it's not actually, let me clarify some things. Brookline Baseball and Softball wanted to recognize all the contributions that retired 7th Ward Commissioner Jimmy McGarity made to Brookline, to youth sports in general, but especially to Brookline. And so they're going to rename their Field C, which is the Major Boys Field, which is the one unlighted field in the far corner, in Mr. McGarity's honor. But they came to the Parks Board and said, well, we don't need to come here. We would like you to support our decision to do this, that it's an endorsement of their decision. And the Parks Board voted unanimously to do that and to request that the Board of Commissioners act on that. So that this is an endorsement of, we are not renaming Field C. The Brookline Baseball is renaming Field C. Rather than Field C, it will be named as the James McGarity Field. We're recognizing the contributions of Mr. McGarity and endorsing or their decision to do this.
For clarification purposes, Field C is Township Field, right?
It's just like if you, yes, it's the whole Field C is a baseball field on Veterans, in Veterans Park. This is, the field behind us is Field A, the one in between the two is Field B. It's just how Brookline recognizes their fields. Instead of being called Field C, if they're playing a game, they're going to be playing at McGarity Field.
Well, I appreciate the clarification. I mean, I think, I mean, is there a point that it is not necessary for us to act in order to do this? It makes
What we're
sense to me
doing
if this is township property.
I think we do a lot of resolutions where we're giving our opinion and we're saying we think this is a great move on Brookline's part to do this, and that's basically what we're doing here.
Okay. Any questions or comments?
Mr. President,
Yes.
so I object to the renaming of this field or the endorsement of the renaming of this field. Be clear, my objections are not based on whether or not Mr. McGarity is deserving of recognition for his contributions to Brookline baseball or to this township. Rather, I feel really strongly that we need to have formalized policy and process in place for naming our township assets. Without this, it seems that we can just be renaming our fields, our buildings, our parks, et cetera, anytime that we desire. On doing some research, I found that many municipalities have policies in place to formalize the process. I even understand we have something for our parks maybe that isn't necessarily adopted yet, and maybe Mr. Barrett can correct me on that, but that we haven't officially adopted that, perhaps. And so it's with this in mind that I would recommend tabling it, this resolution, until such a time that a policy is put in place, and perhaps we can do that with our township property committee. I just want to reiterate, though, before I conclude my remarks, to say that with all sincerity, I do want to recognize and thank former Commissioner McGarity for his years of service and many contributions to the community. But if asked to vote on this resolution next week without any formalized process for naming our township assets, I will be voting no. Thank you.
Yeah, and, you know, the fact is, there are two fields at Caracon Baseball named for basically coaches at Caracon. So Brookline is naming one of their fields for someone who has did a lot for it. We're not, I mean, in football season, that's not McGarity Field. So it's really, we're not naming something. Brookline is naming the field. We're saying we think that's a good decision. But
Well, is it, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hart, go on.
I think that Brookline would like to recognize Mr. McGarity shortly, and I do not, for that reason, I would not want to delay the resolution.
Yeah, I would believe that it's real important that we do this now. I think we all know why, but I also know that yes, there can be things where we name things and we might need to come up with the rules down the road, but I don't believe this is is a thing that we have to, as Terry said, we don't even have to, we might not even need to vote on this. This is just to endorse what they said for all the years of service that he did to the community. And also, is it like the same as if there was like a park bench and they wanted to name a bench to honor somebody that did a lot for the league or for the community, and it's at a township park, which I know there's a lot named for people, benches and stuff, and I don't believe that's come before our board.
Thank you, Commissioner Quinn, and Commissioner Hart. I'm not sure that we should be reluctant to take action. One thing I would ask, is it possible for our property committee here on this board to at least gather all the facts and this week have a meeting to discuss whether or not we should whether or not we should name this field after Commissioner McGarity. I think Commissioner Hart, I'd hate to see the sign come down at the end of baseball season, and a couple years from now, we're trying to figure out what person from football, the football organization wants to honor, and a different sign go up.
Well,
It seems to me maybe we go all in.
It's going up on Brookline's scoreboard, so it's Brookline's property. It's not our property. They're paying for
Yeah,
the
it's not
sign.
gonna
We're not involved. All we're saying is we support your decision. We recognize what Mr. McGarity has contributed to youth sports and especially Brookline. I coached there for years. I was a commissioner there. He was was always enthusiastically supporting. So there's no cost to the township here.
Well, how about we do a proclamation that says we herald, his work and recognize that Brookline wants to do this, and does it? I just think of resolutions and proclamations and ordinances. I mean, they all have different purposes. A resolution is something that it's not an action we take at the beginning of a meeting. It's an action we take in the middle after we do ordinances. It's an action that requires, a majority of the board, and it's typically an action that compels something. Send a letter, take a position, do something like that. We do proclamations for folks to highlight, somebody's contribution or somebody's, to herald somebody's actions. I don't know, Brian, maybe you know off the top of your head, did the board take action in order to name the gym at the Crack for Mr. Denny upon his retirement?
No, they didn't, and they didn't take action when we named the room downstairs at Jean-Marie Rushforth. Not sure that they did.
I think for the room.
Let me suggest this. The good news is it's modern times. Folks can get together by Zoom or by a call. If the property committee can tell us sometime this week the proper action to take, we're talking about it now, so there's no harm about if this changes its form or if it stays exactly it is between now and Monday. The key to the work session is to talk these things through. And if we can get a recommendation from the township property subcommittee here on this board to tell us the proper action to take and what action they recommend we take, and let's then consider it and take it next week. If it is a resolution, we'll consider a resolution. If a proclamation is the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do. I agree with Commissioner Trombetta that we need to institute some formal proceedings for how we go about naming township property and doing.
You're going to tell all the leagues what they can name, like a scoreboard or a bench or anything?
Well, that's something that's got to be that. These are legitimate questions, I don't want us to start down a road and then have somebody say a year later, well, what about this and what about this and what about this?
Gone down this road before too. I believe a couple of years ago we named.
Where was the opposition when we renamed $30 million facility for Andy? I mean, nobody objected to that. This is so de minimis compared to something like this. I can't.
It's not an objection.
We have in the past, as chairman of the property committee, we have brought before the board, we've renamed the field at Steel Field to Stewart Field.
Oh, I remember.
For a person. Cirillo Field in Westgate Hills.
Yeah.
You've got many other things that have been renamed there. I mean, if we're going to go back and do it, then everything we've done has got to go back
No, hold on, I'm saying, can we do that? Can the town, Bill, you chair the township property committee, can we?
We can meet after this meeting if you want.
Could you guys meet after the meeting and have a conversation about it and just let us know what the proper procedure? It's just, it's a resolution that says that we endorse Brookline Baseball's, what they want to do. I don't think that needs to be done by resolution. We could do a proclamation. But if we want to name the field and name our property after Commissioner McGarity, and a resolution is the right way to do it, then I say let's do that and let's put it up for consideration. But this is the first I'm hearing of we don't need to take action. Because if we don't need to take action, we don't need to pass a resolution, because that's official action, requires debate, requires public comment. If that's the right thing to do, and it establishes a sense of permanence that we'd like to do, then let's do that right. And I appreciate, trust me, I appreciate what we're talking about here in terms of timing, and respect it, and would like to see this happen. And I don't see what we're talking about right now as an impediment to that happening. But I do think we have to be clear.
But over the years, we always said that we were going to be clear too, and we never did anything. So I understand that we're trying to do it now, but also I don't understand what the big issue is about the name this field from. I received lots of calls and emails, and just I ran into everybody, and everybody in my ward that I've talked to, as have said that they support this. And I know that that's not the issue, that if they support
but I don't doubt that, and I don't doubt the sentiment is the same, would be the same in numerous boards. Not my issue. I would like us to, I'd like us to be precise, and this is not something that can't be done this week, right? I mean, there's no reason.
But what if we come back with rules that say you have to wait?
I'm not telling you to come back with rules. I'm asking the Township Property Committee to report to us the right action to do next week, whether it's a proclamation or a resolution, and what specifically we're doing. And then do it, because this is my first understanding tonight, that we're just validating what Brookline wants to do, as opposed to taking our own action. I don't know if I don't have a problem with us taking our own action. Just like to hear the property.
When we do a resolution and we tell the Pennsylvania Senate or the U.S. Senate that we want them to pass a bill.
Yeah.
Tell me, does that have we're giving an opinion. We support this bill.
Oh, no, a formal action happens. The township sends a letter on behalf of the Board of Commissioners to those
The
entities.
township could send a letter to Brookline and say, we support your decision to name this field.
No, but we could also just name it.
No, we're not naming the field. It's Brookline's Field C. I mean,
But I guess that's one of my issues, Commissioner Hart, is that it's not Brookline's Field C. It's the township's Field C. So let's do whatever action's necessary.
If I could just jump
do
in,
this.
I think part of the disconnect, though, is that what Jerry is saying is that lot of grass is not going to be McGarity Field. What he's saying is that during baseball season, when Brookline has the use of that field, it is McGarity Field, and that's the distinction that Jerry I think is trying to make. Which is part of township property, but they're taking Field C. It's also, during the fall, it's the practice field for that, not Field C, but parts of A and B. And during Brookline is Sacred Heart football practice field. I mean, I think we're getting caught up in language here that's different. I think Commissioner Holmes and Commissioner Trombetta believe that if we're going to be renaming township property at some point, we should have a policy in place for it. I think what Commissioner Hart and Commissioner Quinn are suggesting maybe is not that we're not renaming it itself, that Brookline is simply using their identifiable schedules to identify this as McGarity Field for them. I don't know if any of this changes. If the property committee says we should have a resolution, we're all going to vote on this next week. How I look at it.
Yeah, all right, I appreciate your comments, Commissioner McCluskey, and I appreciate your, my motivation here is not to rename this field. My assumption as we've gone through this process was that under consideration for us was to rename this piece of property for Commissioner McGarity in recognition of what he did for Brookline baseball. And while I get that other people use that field, it's a significant. It is how the field is thought of. It's how Veterans Field is thought of. It's people think of Brookline baseball. That's what they think of Mr. McGarity. So I assumed until now that we were talking about naming township property. And I just wanted to make sure we did. Just want to make sure that we did it right and at least got the input from the township property committee, which I think we could pull off this week.
And a lot still call the field the police field. That's what I have always heard the field called still. So everybody.
That I won't support.
No. But that's
I'm just messing with you, John.
Well, that's what a lot still call. That's what the overwhelming majority call it up there when they say the games are at the police field, or games are at field A or field B or field C. They might still call it field C when they go to the games. But I just think this is we might have read a lot into it, and I don't think it's a big huge deal. I think it's an honor that I think that we all agree should be done. But yeah, so I just.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is I don't want to half cook it. If we can do this week and do it, I mean, if the property committee can meet and come back to us with a conclusion of the action we should take, whether it's validate what Brookline is doing, recognition that that's going to happen during baseball season, or somebody wants to do more, just report back to the rest of us, and we'll. I mean, it's on the agenda. It's on the agenda as currently drafted. If that's how we'll proceed, it'll be considered by everybody next week. But I mean, I would consider. I think the township property committee ought to just tell us and look at it.
Well, I think, we're crossing a lot of boundaries. We're making a thing. I agree we need a policy, especially for fixed assets, like this building, the CREC, fields in general, to be there. That's a broader policy than just reclassifying and giving a name to a baseball diamond. I agree, we need to come up with a policy. We did have an informal policy. This has come up before. This has come up 2 times I can remember. One, the first time is when you brought up and made the resolution to name McDonald Field for Carol back when I first became a commissioner. You presented it and talked greatly about that. So
yeah, I'd have to go back to the tapes on that one, but okay. I mean, I do know we did that, and I voted for it. Yeah.
And the next time the big discussion was when the field at Westgate was renamed for another former commissioner. But we did ask as far as recreation facilities, we did have the Parks and Rec Board go look at this when I think Tim was still here. One of the responses came back. It came to the board and it was not voted on. And some of the things made sense. That a person, if it's going to have to be named for somebody's name, they have to had passed away for at least a minimum of 5 years. And we looked at other townships, other academic institutions, and everything like that. So there was already a written policy that the Boards and Rec has passed and presented to the board that we never took action on. So, and that was strictly for recreational facilities, the names. I don't know if you were there, Michelle, back then. It was, one of the things that came there was there. And then the next thing I knew, we had the gym named after Tim Denny before he retired. So I don't know where we're talking about this and what the guidelines are going to be. But in this thing, I think we're talking about, this is an apples and oranges. We're talking about a person who was elected 7 times by the members of the
yeah.
He served as a commissioner for
here.
8 years. They have bathrooms there. They have a snack shop, they have plumbing and running water for the, all because of Jimmy's doggedness in forcing the Parks and Recreation and Public Works to build all that stuff. I mean, that's why Brookline is so in love and indebted to Jimmy. He literally was the driving force behind a lot of that stuff. And that's why they want to do it. They want to do it in honor while he can still be aware of the honor is what I think is going on. I haven't been part of this, so it's just there, but I think it's well worth just redesignating a field, a portion of the field is not taking the whole property and renaming Veterans Field for Jimmy Smith or whoever the next person comes along to do that. And we'll have the same things. I mean, you've got fields at Caricon that are named. I know that Hilltop is going to want to name the Little League field for somebody shortly. That's already been brought to me a couple of times. And it's just, we'll do that. But it's renaming the fields, I'm not sure that's really a property thing. And I'd have to go to the solicitor, sit down to talk with him about what the appropriate and legal ramification or action that the board should take in something like this. But we need a policy. I'll agree on the building. Like if we ever wanted to name this building as an administration building for somebody down the road that had passed away, we have to have guidelines to do that stuff, just like any institution would. But I think we should take some input from the Parks and Rec on the facilities in conjunction with Brian as well, because we're not talking about real property here. If you're just referring to a section of one of our fields as somebody's name instead of Field C, so. But we'll go talk about it. But I think it should be an encompassing and full set of goals to name any property soup to nuts for the township, and that policy's got to cover it. It'd be almost like getting sidewalks. We want to have an encompassing ordinance for that about what sidewalks are. We should have the same type of thing here. So,
I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Markstrom. I don't. To the extent that you're talking about Commissioner McGarrity's, contributions to Brookline in response to or to convince me of anything, I regret if that's what you felt was necessary. It's not the issue I'm trying to convey, and I'm not conveying it very well. Resolution we have before us says that we endorse Brookline's baseball and softball's request to name Field C in honor of Jim McGarrity. Now, I don't know until tonight, as we're talking about what Field C is like during baseball season and how Field C is used afterwards. I'm just asking for more precision. We can concurrently, or as a consequence of this, finally undertake the effort to address how we want to name, whether we're going to name township assets after folks and what the requirements would be on that. I don't suggest that we create rules that we're immediately in violation of for all the things we've done in the past. So I think and there are rules to make. So, the evaluation of what standards should be used for naming township assets certainly should take into account our history of doing it. And that would include, depending on when it's done, the history of how we handle this field for Mr. McGarrity. So at the risk of sounding funny, my request was simple, and that was to ask the Township Committee to tell us how we should proceed in this, and tell us this week, and we'll evaluate it and consider it next week. Any other thoughts or comments on this? Hearing none. We also have next week 3 tax assessment stipulations to be considered. As folks know, those are those we approve in public, but they are negotiated by our solicitor. We also have contract awards. The Public Works will be doing a contract award for gasoline and also the asphalt maintenance of parking lots, the 1010 and 1014 Darby Road. Any questions or comments on those contracts? I trust they.
The only question I have is when do they plan on doing the new pavement or the ceiling for the parking lot?
I'll get that information for you.
Thank you.
Not this week.
I was just curious what the timeframe was. I would imagine that might shut the parking lot down for a little bit of time.
Yeah, it'll be after we get your approval, probably be for a weekend.
Also, Scadium, we have a Scadium chiller replacement. I know that's something we've been talking about for a while. Any questions or comments on that?
Chairman, can I give a very brief synopsis of that?
You may, thank you.
So the Scadium has two chillers. They're redundant. They're set up so that if one goes down, the other one runs. They're running parallel currently. It's the second set of chillers in the Scadium. The Scadium was built in the mid-'70s. The last set was replaced, I believe, in the late '90s. At that time, one chiller went down. We were able to get a chiller literally in 4 to 6 weeks. The lead time on chillers now is 40 weeks. So we got a notification, we've collaborated with staff from our maintenance contractor that the chillers were coming to the end of their useful life. And shortly thereafter, as we're evaluating the need to replace them, a compressor on a chiller went. Each chiller has 2 compressors. So we met and we collaboratively said, hey, if we're going to replace these chillers and we're going to do it next year, we have to get bids out on the street to get a contract awarded to get a 40-week lead time piece of equipment ordered. So for next week, you're going to get a tabulation of 2 bids, mechanical bids, where we got 3 bids from 3 contractors, the electrical bids, because we're mandated to get separate trade bids here, where we got 4 bids from 4 contractors. And as we always tabulate the bids and make a recommendation, you'll get that for your meeting next week. Fortunately, all contractors we're familiar with and we've worked with in the past. So the recommendations are come to replace the compressors, replace what are called chilled water pumps. Chilled water pumps they circulate the water. In anticipation of a few things, the Scadium will shut down from mid-May of next year till mid-August of next year. Now, this is 2024 we're talking about, not 2023, thus the 40-week lead time. The project's going to be set up so that the Scadium shutdown will not happen until that equipment is on site, because we can't afford to shut the Scadium down and then have the equipment come in 30 days. So we're very time sensitive on this job. The equipment will come on site, the Scadium will shut down. Equipment has to be in by mid-July, runs for a month, and then we anticipate reopening. A couple other anomalies of the award of the contract documents. The energy efficient report by SSM made recommendations for the Scadium. 3 of those recommendations are implemented in what's going to be what we bid. They are high efficiency chillers. The chillers are, in this case, now able to operate in parallel, not just in series. That was one of the recommendations of the report. So that's the controls to do that. And the chilled water pumps will have what are called variable frequency drives, as opposed to the pumps turning on and off. They vary. The frequency of the pumps vary based on the demand. Those are all energy requirements, energy saving suggestions that came out of the SSM report. The last item, just anticipating a question that could come up. We passed the RCO ordinance last month. This job did go out for bid prior to the board adopting the RCO ordinance, so that was not rolled into these bid requirements. So, like I said, you'll get a recommendation.
So, yeah, I do have a question. How does that work? If we retroactively incorporate that to the bid, or do we just accept that it was too early to include
Just
the
like
responsible contracting requirement?
Many things were awarded. It was passed after advertisement. So the job was put out on the street for public bid, as we're required to do prior to the ordinance being passed.
Yeah, my question was just, do we have to retroactively change anything? But you're saying we actually can't.
I actually can't.
Yeah, I just
Well,
wasn't sure if there
John
was
said
going to
something
be.
different, and we did talk through this a little bit. We can't
I just
go back.
wondered if there was going to be any additional costs. Oh, you answered that. Thank you.
It's like anything. We can't add any, once we accept the bids, that's what's bid on. So we either accept them and award it, or we reject them and add more stuff to it.
Then you would redo it and
We'd have to redo it,
Yeah,
and we're not putting
rebid.
those we're not putting those chillers in next year if we redo it.
Right, yeah, I gotcha.
Thus our concern about not going out for bids when we did. It was, I will tell you that it was no small effort to get a good set of bid documents out on the street once we realized and worked backwards from a shutdown next summer. We didn't want to be shutting down in September or October or now. We wanted to be shutting down in the summertime. So that drove the whole schedule. Questions?
No, quite informative. Thank you. Also, emergency medical services will be purchasing, the automatic external defibrillators, which is associated with our ARPA Heart Rescue Program. So no need to go over that again. Also, for our presentation next week, we will be doing two proclamations. What I miss? Two proclamations. A proclamation addressing Juneteenth, National Freedom Day, as well as Pride Month. That is our agenda for next week. Does anybody have anything to offer or comment on those proclamations or anything else for the evening? Hearing nothing, I will consider a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.